My daughter-in-law served me another bowl of soup, smiling sweetly as she placed it before me. My hands trembled as I lifted the spoon. The dizziness had started again, the same creeping nausea I'd felt every day this week. But just as I was about to set the spoon down, my husband David leaned close and whispered in my ear, barely audible over the kitchen radio, "Keep eating, my love." I switched the bowls. Hello, dear listeners. Thank you for joining me today. Before I begin, I would be so grateful if you would subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me which state or country you're listening from. It warms my heart to know how far these stories travel. Now, let me tell you mine. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Saigon Pearl, the restaurant I'd built with my own hands 30 years ago. I stood at the counter, watching steam rise from pots of pho broth that had been simmering since 4 a.m. The scent of star anise, cinnamon, and charred ginger filled the air, the same smells that had filled my mother's kitchen in Vietnam a lifetime ago. This restaurant wasn't just my business. It was my heart, my history, my bridge between the girl I'd been in Saigon and the woman I'd become in San Jose. I was born Nguyen Thi Minh, but everyone here called me Margaret. The name felt foreign on my tongue for years, chosen by an immigration officer who couldn't pronounce my given name. But I'd learned to wear it like I'd learned everything else in this country, with determination and quiet dignity. I came here in 1975 with nothing but a small suitcase and my mother's recipe book, handwritten in Vietnamese, the pages yellowed and fragile as dried leaves. David found me 28 years ago. He was a regular customer, a kind-faced chemist who worked at a pharmaceutical company nearby. He came every Tuesday for lunch, always ordering the same thing, bun bo hue, and always leaving a generous tip with a shy smile. It took him 6 months to ask me to dinner. It took me 6 weeks to say yes. We married a year later, and he became not just my husband but my partner in every sense. He never tried to change me, never asked me to be less Vietnamese, less myself. He learned to use chopsticks. He learned basic Vietnamese phrases to chat with my elderly customers. He even helped me expand the restaurant, using his savings to buy the building next door when it went up for sale. We had one son, Marcus. I named him after David's father, a gesture of respect that made my husband cry the first time he held our baby. Marcus grew up running between the restaurant tables, doing homework in the back office while I prepped vegetables, falling asleep to the rhythmic sound of my cleaver on the cutting board. He was a good boy, gentle like his father, smart like both of us. He went to Berkeley, studied business, made us so proud. Then 2 years ago, he brought Brittany home. She walked into our restaurant like she was entering a contaminated zone, her nose wrinkled in distaste. She was tall, blonde, beautiful in that sharp, polished way that made me feel small and old. She wore all white, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly revenue. She ordered nothing, claiming she had food sensitivities. She sat at our table with her phone, texting throughout the entire meal, while Marcus tried desperately to make conversation between us. "Mom's restaurant is really successful," Marcus said, his voice too bright, too eager. "She owns the building, completely paid off. Prime location in downtown San Jose." Brittany's eyes flickered up from her phone then. Just for a moment, I saw something sharp and calculating in that glance, like a hawk spotting prey. "How nice," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. So authentic. They married 6 months later. A wedding that cost more than my first year's revenue, paid for by Brittany's family. Brittany's father owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. Her mother had never worked a day in her life. They looked at me and David like we were the help. The trouble started slowly, like poison seeping into clean water. First, it was just comments. "Marcus, doesn't it bother you that your clothes always smell like that restaurant? Your mother really should retire. She's getting too old for such hard work. Have you thought about what you'll do with that building when it's yours?" Marcus started visiting less. When he did come, Brittany was always with him, always finding fault. The restaurant was too hot, too crowded, too loud. The smell gave her headaches. She'd sit there with a martyred expression while I served them my best dishes, food I'd spent hours preparing, food that other customers lined up for blocks to taste. Then, 6 months ago, everything changed. I started feeling sick. It began subtly, a vague nausea after meals, dizzy spells that I attributed to working too hard, standing too long over hot stoves. But it got worse. My hands developed a tremor. My hair started falling out in clumps. I had terrible stomach pains that would wake me at night, doubled over in agony. David took me to doctor after doctor. They ran tests, so many tests. My blood work showed abnormalities, but nothing conclusive. One doctor suggested stress, another mentioned early onset Parkinson's, a third wondered about an autoimmune disorder. They gave me medications that didn't help. The symptoms continued, worsening week by week. The strange thing was, I only felt sick at home. At the restaurant, standing over my pots and woks, breathing in the steam from my broths, I felt almost normal. But the moment I walked through our front door, the nausea would return. Maybe you're allergic to something in the house, one doctor suggested. New cleaning products? Recent renovations? We'd done neither. Our small house in Willow Glen was the same as it had been for 20 years. Same furniture, same paint, same everything. David cleaned it meticulously every weekend while I worked at the restaurant. Nothing had changed, except for one thing. Brittany had started coming over. It began 3 months ago. She'd show up unannounced, always around dinner time, always with a bright smile and a covered dish. "I made extra," she'd chirp. "Can't let it go to waste. You must try my soup, Margaret. It's from a recipe I got from my nutritionist. So healthy, all organic ingredients." At first, I was touched. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe she was trying to build a bridge between us, to show love the way she knew how. I'd eat her offerings, grateful for the gesture if not for the bland, tasteless food itself. She made these cream-based soups, white and thick, completely different from the clear, aromatic broths I grew up with. But I ate them anyway, every spoonful, because she'd made them for me. And every time I did, I got sicker. "You look terrible, Margaret," she'd say, her voice honey-sweet. "Maybe it's time to think about slowing down. Marcus and I have been talking. There's a wonderful assisted living community in Los Gatos. Beautiful grounds, gourmet meals, full medical care. You'd love it there." "I'm not going anywhere," I'd tell her, my voice weak but firm. "This is my home." Of course, she'd pat my hand with her cold fingers, just something to think about. "You know, for when the restaurant gets to be too much. Marcus could manage the sale for you. Such prime real estate, it would sell in a heartbeat. You'd have plenty of money for the best care." The sale. Always back to the sale. David noticed before I did. My brilliant, observant husband, who'd spent 40 years analyzing chemical compounds, looking for anomalies, finding patterns invisible to ordinary eyes. It was a Thursday evening. Brittany had come over with her usual covered dish. This time, it was a butternut squash soup, she said, with coconut milk and turmeric. She served it to both of us, filling our bowls from her pot, chatting about some charity luncheon she'd attended. I lifted my spoon, and that's when David leaned over and whispered those words that changed everything. "Keep eating, my love." I switched the bowls. My hand froze halfway to my mouth. I looked at him, and in his gentle brown eyes I saw something I'd never seen before. Not just concern, but cold, hard certainty. The look of a scientist who'd just proven a terrible hypothesis. I ate the soup. David ate his. Brittany watched us both with those sharp hawk eyes, her smile never quite reaching them. When we finished, she collected the bowls, washed them carefully in our sink, and left with a cheerful wave. "Feel better, Margaret. See you next week." The moment her car pulled away, I turned to David. "What did you mean? What did you switch?" He took both my hands in his. They were shaking, and for the first time in our 28 years together, I saw fear in his face. Real, bone-deep fear. "I've been testing your food," he said quietly. "Every meal Brittany brings you. I've been taking samples to my old lab. I told them I'm working on a personal project. Margaret, my love, someone has been poisoning you. There's arsenic in every single thing she's served you for the past 3 months." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, my mind refusing to process what he'd just said. Arsenic. Poison. My daughter-in-law, the sweet-faced woman who called me by my American name, who smiled so brightly, who brought me soup. That's impossible, I whispered. Why would she? She couldn't. I didn't want to believe it either, David said. His jaw was tight, his chemist's mind clearly wrestling with the human horror of what his analysis had revealed. I started suspecting 2 weeks ago. You only got sick on days she visited. The symptoms, the blood test abnormalities, everything matched arsenic poisoning. So I started collecting samples. Small amounts, just a teaspoon from each dish she brought. I tested them all. He went to his study and returned with a folder. Inside were printouts, charts, chemical analyses that meant nothing to me but everything to him. Column after column of numbers, graphs showing concentration levels. And there, highlighted in yellow on every page, the same word, arsenic. It's clever, he said, his voice clinical now, detached, the only way he could discuss something so monstrous. The doses are small, carefully calibrated to make you sick, but not kill you quickly. She's been doing this gradually, building it up in your system over time. Eventually, it would have caused organ failure. The doctors would have attributed it to your mystery illness. No one would have suspected murder. Murder. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. For 3 weeks now, David continued. I've been switching our bowls when she wasn't looking. When she serves you, she's very particular. Always hands you a specific bowl, always keeps the other for me. But while she's getting napkins or water, I switch them. You've been eating from the clean bowl. I've been eating the poisoned one. David! I grabbed his arms. You've been poisoning yourself? For 3 weeks? Small doses, he said calmly. I've been monitoring my own blood levels, taking chelation therapy at night after you fall asleep. I'm fine, love, but I needed to be sure. I needed to see if she'd keep doing it, if the pattern would continue, and it has. Every single time she visits, every single bowl she brings you, arsenic. I have samples, dates, concentration levels, evidence. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. We have to tell Marcus. We have to go to the police. Not yet. David knelt beside me, taking my hands again. We don't have enough proof. She's careful, always washes the bowls herself, never leaves anything behind. Our word against hers. Marcus would never believe his wife is trying to kill his mother. We need more. We need to catch her in a way she can't deny. How? His eyes met mine, and in them I saw not just my gentle husband, but a warrior, a protector who'd been eating poison for 3 weeks to save my life. We let her think it's working, he said. You keep getting worse, visibly worse. She thinks you're eating her poisoned food. Meanwhile, I keep collecting evidence, and we wait for her to make a mistake. So began the strangest, most terrifying weeks of my life. I became an actress in a play where the stakes were life and death. I had to pretend to deteriorate, to grow weaker, more confused, more helpless. At the restaurant, I'd work as hard as ever, but the moment I knew Brittany might see me, I'd transform. I'd shuffle instead of walk, let my hands shake visibly, forget words mid-sentence, wear my oldest, most threadbare clothes, stop dyeing the gray from my hair. I became the picture of a woman fading away, and it killed something inside me to see the satisfaction in Brittany's eyes every time she visited. Oh, Margaret, you look so frail, she'd coo, bringing another poisoned soup, another toxic casserole. Are you sure you're managing the restaurant okay? Marcus is so worried about you. I'm fine, I'd quaver, playing my part, just tired. Of course you are, sweetie. At your age, with your health issues, managing that restaurant all alone, it's too much. Maybe it's time to let Marcus help you. He could handle the sale, take all that burden off your shoulders. Then you could rest, really rest. Always the same refrain. Sell the restaurant, get rid of the burden, take the money and disappear into some facility where I'd slowly waste away from my mystery illness, and they'd get everything. The building, the business, the life I'd spent 30 years building from nothing. But I wasn't nothing. I was Margaret Chen, born Nguyen Thi Minh, daughter of a woman who'd survived war and famine, who'd taught me that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes strength is quiet. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's eating poison and smiling, because you know the truth, and truth is a weapon sharper than any knife. David continued his work. Every sample saved, labeled, documented. He installed a tiny camera in our kitchen, hidden in the smoke detector, recording every visit, every bowl she served, every time she made sure I ate from the right one. He photographed the search history on her laptop one night when she and Marcus came for dinner and left it unattended. Searches for slow poison, undetectable, arsenic death time frame, how to inherit from in-laws, early signs of dementia. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. David found earlier searches too. How to make someone look incompetent, getting power of attorney from elderly parent, selling property from someone with dementia. Her plan was clear now. Poison me slowly, just enough to make me appear mentally and physically incompetent. Get Marcus to secure power of attorney, claiming he needed to help his poor, confused mother. Force the sale of the restaurant and our house. Put me in a facility where I'd continue to decline, and she'd continue to poison me whenever she visited until one day my organs would simply give out. Natural causes, the doctors would say. Tragic, but she'd been sick for so long. Marcus knew nothing. I was sure of that. My son, for all his business education, for all his success, was blind when it came to his wife. He loved her desperately, wanted to please her, wanted to give her the lifestyle she'd grown up with. When she talked about the restaurant being such a burden on his poor mother, he heard wifely concern, not calculated greed. The breaking point came on a Tuesday, exactly 4 months after this nightmare began. Brittany arrived with her usual covered dish. But this time, Marcus was with her, and his face was serious. They sat us down in our own living room like we were children about to be disciplined. "Mom, Dad," Marcus began, his voice gentle but firm. "We need to talk about your situation. Mom, you're clearly not well. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong. You're losing weight, losing hair, you can barely remember conversations. Dad's trying his best, but he's 71 years old. He can't care for you alone." I opened my mouth to protest, but Brittany cut me off, her voice syrupy with false sympathy. "We've found the perfect place, Margaret. Sunrise Senior Living in Los Gatos. Beautiful private rooms, 24-hour nursing care, a memory care unit for when you need more specialized help. And the best part? We can cover the costs by selling the restaurant property." "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "That's my restaurant. My life's work." "Sweetie, you can't even run it anymore," Brittany said, reaching over to pat my hand. I pulled away. Her smile flickered, just for a second, and I saw something cold flash in her eyes. "Marcus has been covering your bills for months. The restaurant is losing money. You're not competent to manage it. We've already consulted with an attorney about getting conservatorship." "Conservatorship?" David's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You want to take away my wife's legal rights?" "It's for her own good," Marcus said, and I could hear the pain in his voice, see the conflict on his face. He really believed he was helping. Mom needs professional care. The restaurant needs to be sold while the property value is still high. It's the practical solution. "I won't sign anything," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had left. "You can't make me." Brittany's mask slipped entirely then. Her voice turned hard, sharp as broken glass. "Actually, with medical documentation of your declining mental state, we can petition the court to declare you incompetent. We have doctors' reports, witnesses who've seen your deterioration. Marcus has been documenting everything, haven't you, honey?" Marcus looked uncomfortable but nodded. "I've been keeping notes. For the doctors. You've seemed so confused lately, Mom. Last week you called me 3 times in one day, asking the same questions, not remembering we'd already talked. You forgot Dad's birthday. You left the stove on overnight." I stared at my son. None of that was true. None of it. But I saw the genuine concern in his eyes, and I realized that Brittany had been feeding him these stories, poisoning his mind against me as surely as she'd been poisoning my body. "We'll start the paperwork next week," Brittany said, standing up, her victory clear in her posture. "I've already contacted a realtor about the property. In this market, we should get at least $4 million. Plenty to keep you comfortable for the rest of for however long." She didn't even bother to hide the meaning in that pause. However long she decided to let me live. They left. I sat in my living room, in the house I'd made a home, and for the first time in months, I cried. Not from fear, not from pain, but from rage. Pure, white-hot rage that this woman thought she could take everything from me, that she could manipulate my own son, that she could literally poison me and get away with it. David held me while I cried. Then he dried my tears and showed me what he'd been working on. A case file. Months of evidence, meticulously documented. Chemical analyses showing arsenic in every single dish Brittany had brought. Timeline correlations between her visits and my symptoms. Screenshots of her search history. Video footage from our kitchen camera showing her carefully selecting which bowl to give me, making sure I ate from the poisoned one. Receipts for her purchases of rat poison from 3 different hardware stores, buying small amounts each time to avoid suspicion, but David had tracked them all through her credit card statements that Marcus had innocently left at our house one day. And the final piece. A confession of sorts. David had his own phone hidden during that last conversation, and he'd recorded everything. Brittany's cold calculation, her mention of my deteriorating mental state, her clear knowledge that I was declining, her plan to force the sale. Combined with all the other evidence, it painted a picture of premeditated murder. "Tomorrow," David said, his voice steady and sure, "we go to the police, we show them everything. And then, my love, we watch her world burn." But fate had other timing in mind. That night, Brittany got sick. Really sick. She'd been experiencing symptoms for weeks, she'd told Marcus, but thought it was just stress. But tonight, at some charity gala, she'd collapsed. Severe abdominal pain, vomiting, tremors. Marcus rushed her to the emergency room at El Camino Hospital. The doctors ran tests. Standard blood work for someone presenting with acute gastric distress. And there it was, in her blood, in her urine, in her hair follicles. Arsenic. High levels of arsenic, consistent with chronic exposure over several weeks. David's switching of the bowls had saved my life and condemned hers. Every time she'd brought me poison, thinking I was eating it, she'd been consuming it herself. For 3 months, in careful, measured doses, she'd been slowly poisoning herself. The hospital was required by law to report it. Arsenic poisoning isn't accidental. The police were called. Brittany, in her hospital bed, still groggy from pain medication, tried to explain. She didn't know how it could have happened. She'd been so careful with her diet, only eating organic food, most of it prepared by herself. "Prepared by yourself?" the detective asked. "What kind of food?" "Soups, mostly," she said. "I make these healthy cream soups. I bring them to my elderly mother-in-law, too. Poor thing is so sick, I've been trying to help her." And that's when the detective's expression changed. That's when he asked about me. That's when Marcus, sitting by his wife's hospital bed, started to understand. The police came to our house at 7 a.m. The next morning, we were ready. David had the entire case file prepared, every piece of evidence organized in a binder that would have made any prosecutor weep with joy. He handed it over and said simply, "My wife was being poisoned by her daughter-in-law. This is the proof." They spent 6 hours going through everything: the chemical analyses, the video footage, the search history, the timeline. And then they went to the hospital and arrested Brittany in her hospital bed, charging her with attempted murder. Marcus showed up at our door that evening. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a single day. His eyes were red from crying, his face pale and drawn. He stood on our doorstep, and for a long moment, he couldn't speak. "I didn't know," he finally whispered. "I swear to God, Mom, I didn't know. She told me you were getting worse, that you were confused, forgetting things. She showed me pictures of you looking so sick. I thought we were helping. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised to be kind and trusting, and I saw how those very qualities had been weaponized against him, against us. She fooled us both," I said quietly. "Come inside." We talked for hours that night. I told him everything. David showed him the evidence. Marcus listened, his face crumbling as he realized how thoroughly he'd been manipulated, how close he'd come to being an accessory to his own mother's murder. "The conservatorship," he said, his voice breaking. "The notes I was keeping about you being confused. She was going to use that, wasn't she? To make it seem like you were incompetent, like selling the restaurant was the right thing. And then after the sale, After you were safely locked away in some facility, she would have kept. He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Brittany went to trial 6 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution had everything they needed. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was the real victim, that somehow she'd accidentally poisoned herself, but no jury in the world was going to believe that. Not with the search history. Not with the videos of her deliberately giving me specific bowls. Not with the testimony of the hardware store clerks who remembered her buying rat poison multiple times. She was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Her wealthy family disowned her, ashamed of the scandal. Marcus divorced her while she was awaiting sentencing. She lost everything, just as she'd planned for me to lose everything. But unlike her plan for me, Brittany would have time to think about what she'd done. 25 years in a California state prison is a long time to reflect on greed. As for me, I'm still here. Still running Saigon Pearl, though Marcus has taken on more of the management now, not to take over, but to truly help. He's learning the recipes, learning the business, learning to see the restaurant not as a property to be liquidated but as a legacy to be honored. David is still by my side, my gentle chemist who ate poison for 3 months to save me. We've started a new tradition. Every Thursday, the day Brittany used to bring her deadly soups, we cook together. Real soup, clean and pure, full of all the spices and love and life that her poison tried to steal. My hair grew back. The tremors stopped. The weakness faded. Turned out that when you stop being poisoned, you recover quite nicely. I added a new item to the menu at Saigon Pearl. A special butternut squash soup with coconut milk and turmeric. It's delicious, healthy, made with organic ingredients, absolutely free of arsenic. I named it Brittany's Folly on the menu, though only David, Marcus, and I know why. It's become one of our most popular dishes. People love the irony, even if they don't understand it. Some people ask if I'm angry, if I hate my former daughter-in-law. The truth is, I don't have room for hate. Hate is heavy, and I'm done carrying heavy things. What I feel is something closer to pity. She had everything: her health, her youth, her freedom, a husband who loved her, and she threw it all away for money, for a building, for something she could have eventually inherited anyway if she'd just been patient, been kind. Instead, she's in a prison cell, eating institutional food, counting down 25 years. And I'm here, in my restaurant, in my home, surrounded by the smells of lemongrass and basil, listening to my son laugh as he learns to make pho the way his grandmother taught me. I'm here, alive and free, and that's the best revenge of all. The real history of this family isn't written in property deeds or bank accounts. It's written in recipes passed down through generations, in the strength to survive, in the courage to fight back when someone tries to take what's yours. It's written in the love of a husband willing to eat poison to save his wife. It's written in a son learning to honor his mother's legacy instead of liquidating it. So yes, my daughter-in-law tried to poison me, but she failed. And in failing, she taught me something important about the boundaries of family, about when love must step aside and let justice take the lead. About how sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Did you like the story? The question I'm left with, the one I think about late at night when the restaurant is closed and the city is quiet, is this. At what point does self-preservation override family loyalty? When your own child is involved, even unknowingly, in your destruction, where do you draw the line? I drew mine in that kitchen, the day David whispered his terrible truth. I chose to live. I chose to fight. Was I right? I believe I was. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where are you listening from today? What would you have done in my place? Leave a comment and let me know. Your voice matters in this conversation. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own boundaries, your own family, your own choices, please like and subscribe. Every like, every subscription tells me that these stories matter, that truth spoken aloud has power. Thank you for spending this time with me. I wish you health, peace, and the wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go. Until next time, this is Auntie Maeve, reminding you that sometimes the quietest strength is the strongest of all.